Welcome to Local History, Legends, and Lore. I'm Julie Lugo, Cerra, your city historian and probably the oldest tour guide in town. I saved my old tour sheet from 1964 when I was a tour guide at Sony, what is now Sony Pictures Entertainment, but what was then MGM. And we're going to take a look at some old photos today and take a tour of that very first studio. Harry Culver, when he established this town, knew that he needed an economic base to provide the monetary resources to support the community. And so he felt that the movie industry was just that. On the monitor right now you can see a picture of Thomas Ince. When Harry Culver was looking at this area in 1913, 1914, he saw Thomas Ince shooting a movie on Bayona Creek. Ince was very famous as a producer and director of westerns, had his location down at what we now know as Sunset Boulevard and Pacific Coast Highway. And so he talked Ince into moving to Culver City. So Inceville came to Culver City to 10202 West Washington Boulevard. Let me see the next shot, if I may. This was a scrapbook that was found in the state of Oregon, and you can see at the bottom there is a picture in the early 1900s of Ince's studio. That's the Colonade. There were people who were visiting from Milledgeville, I believe. And if we can come in for a close-up of the Colonade. There we go. Those were the columns that are on the front of the Washington Boulevard side. That was the first structure that was built, and actually one of the two landmark structures on the studio lot. That is currently the ceremonial entrance to the studio, but it was actually built for the entry. As you can see, the cars were a lot smaller at that time, so they could get in. Of course, today they cannot. In fact, since 1941. You can see a map of Culver City, and the numbers 1 through 6 indicate the lots that were MGM Studios lots. There were 6 of them in MGM, which was after the Goldwyn Studios. Actually, the order was that Ince started the studio in 1915. He moved out of town about 1917. He then sold the studio to Samuel Goldwyn, whose real name was Goldfish, by the way. And then after Goldwyn, you had the 1924 Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer merger. And in the Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer merger, you had the longest held time of any owner from the 1924 date all the way up to the 1980s. And this is, again, one of the famous shots of the Colonnade in its entirety. You would walk through there to the casting office and to Louis B. Mayer's office. Can we see the next photo? In 1928, we started a bus department in Culver City. Reeve Houck, the mayor at the time, financed the first bus, and this was a celebration of that in front of the studio. Of course, again, the Colonnade, the ceremonial entrance to the studio. This is MGM's lot number 1, and it was the first lot. It was bounded on the north by Washington Boulevard, on the south by Culver Boulevard, on the east by Madison Avenue, and on the west eventually by Overland. If you take a look kind of at the back of the lot, you'll see that there is a 2-story structure which is called Washington Row that actually butts up to the Colonnade. And that was where the bit players had their dressing rooms. They supposedly had women on one level and men on the other, and there was a matron in between. The other thing that I wanted to tell you about that was that you need to take a look at the silent film stages. They had all of the glass around them. They didn't have the need for the soundproofing at that time. So you can see that off to the right. We got another one? Thank you. All righty. Every studio has a main street, and this is the main street of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer Studios. Take a look at the sign, the Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer sign, which is up on the right-hand side. That is on top of a complex of 4 sound stages, and these are the historic sound stages. They were the first ones that were built for sound. They were used for the Busby Berkeley musicals. They had a proscenium arch. From one to another, you had the audience on one side of the one stage, and on the other stage, you had the musicians and the dancers. If you take a look at this is at the East Gate. Louis B. Mayer used to say that when you walked through these gates, there were more stars than there were in the heavens. The East Gate had a fellow, and you can barely see him down on the left-hand side, but his name was Kenny Hollywood, and that was his real name. And he was the guard who let you in and out. There were people who used to sit there and get autographs from the folks as they entered the studio lot. Beyond that, there was a building on the left-hand side which was basically used for TV offices, and there was a dentist up above. The MGM Studio lot was like a city within a city. It had its own police and fire department. It had its own construction mill. They had a telegraph office, communications. They also had a print shop. They had the huge administration building in 1938, the Thalberg building. And they had a shoe shine shop. They had a newspaper office, and Louis B. Mayer had a commissary where the stars used to eat. He thought that it was especially important to have a commissary on the lot where you fed folks because it would keep them on lot and it would increase productivity. Okay, if you take a look at that, you'll see 2 little girls who were Mary Lou Breeball Ulrich Corbin and her little sister Joyce. They were sitting on a bus bench on Washington and Overland, and that was in 1937. Most people were just very used to the studios and just enjoyed the sights. If you take a look at the back of the photo, you'll see that those are all facades on MGM's lot number 2, which was across Overland. Okay, next shot. On Washington Boulevard, just east of the Colonade, you can see the block that developed there. And of course, it had a lot to do with the movie industry. The retake room was a restaurant that all of the locals used to go to. And they also had an area there where they offered studio maps and tours, that kind of thing. Now, as MGM grew, they started acquiring more lots. Eventually, they ended up with 6 lots that they shot on, and this was lot number 2. Lot number 2 was across Overland Avenue from the first lot. And basically today, it has the new senior center, it has senior housing, and it also has studio estates. If you crossed Overland from the main lot, this is what you would see. This is an aerial shot of all of the facades. Let's see the next photo. Very good. This is the train station, and that was used in the Good Earth. It's on the corner of basically Overland and Culver. Would be across from the Veterans Auditorium. Okay, this is a close-up of that same structure, and that's the train. They had the train tracks actually running past the studio on Culver Boulevard and used it to bring in animals for movies and whatever. They had the ability to bring in lots of heavy equipment and that kind of thing. This is a shot that my husband took in 1978. This is just before they took down lot number 2, before they sold it. And you can see that it had just rained. There are reflections of some of the facades in the puddles at the base of that. And if you look very carefully, you can see at the upper right-hand corner a lot of lines, and those are basically the lines that held the canvas that they would pull over to make night scenes during the daytime. That's how they made movies like Singing in the Rain. They would pull over the canvas pieces, it would get dark, and they dug out a little place in a street for Gene Kelly to do his singing in the dance and Singing in the Rain. This is New York East Side Street. This was just off to the right from that other shot. And it was all facades. It had the St. Valentine's Day Massacre shot done right in this area, in the Al Capone story. And of course, if you walked in the door, you would walk through into nothing, basically, because it was just all fronts. That's all it was. Okay, for those of you who are Elizabeth Taylor fans, you might recognize this from the filming of National Velvet when Elizabeth Taylor was a child. This sat over on lot number 2, and this is at the end of its life in the late 70s. Let's see what else we have. All right, this is a mansion. Looks like a mansion, but there is no back on it. And that was primarily used as, or initially used, I think, for Eddie Cantor for a movie called 40 Little Mothers. It had a beautiful lawn in the front and whatever. One of the ongoing series of shorts that was made MGM very famous was the Andy Hardy series. Mickey Rooney and the troops were in that, of course. And that church sat at the edge of Andy Hardy Street. It was used in Sweet Bird of Youth and Father of the Bride, I believe. Okay, let's see what else we have. Well, this is kind of a sad one, but this was the house that was Mrs. Miniver's house in the movie by the same name, and that was in 1978. And the reason we basically took that was because you could see the structure behind it, the way it was built. But that was when they were all in a state of disrepair and they were getting ready to sell the lot for other purposes. Esther Williams was one of the MGM Stable of Stars ladies that they just loved, and she did a lot of her work on MGM's stage number 30, which is very close to the west end of the lot. But she could come over to lot number 2 and she had her own swimming pool. Next one. Okay, they had a town square on lot number 2. And this is a shot of that. There's, I think, a close-up of, there we are. There's a close-up of the depot from that particular area as well. You had everything, and they would redress it. One of the things that happens when you build a set for a particular movie is you leave it until you need it for something else. So this was a set, and I believe this was the Verona set at one time that might have been used for Romeo and Juliet. At any rate, in the 60s, what they did is they took that set and turned it into a bombed-out war town and used it on a regular basis for a 1960s TV show that was called Combat. There was a third major lot that they used for filming, and this is the early part of that lot. This is a shot of the Ben-Hur stables, which actually supplied the horses and all for Ben-Hur. And that was owned by Walter Cameron, who was a movie star in his own right. And when he died in 1942, MGM acquired that property, and they used it for all of their antique cars and whatever. And it became Raintree Plaza later. This is lot number 3. This is one of your photo shots, and that is of Raintree County. Okay, next one. That is from Cimarron with Glenn Ford and Maria Schell. That's on MGM's Lot number 3, which is a 65-acre lot. It's huge. It was huge, and it actually now has 3 housing developments, Raintree, Lakeside, and Tara Hill. At the eastern edge of that lot was the Cotton Blossom, sitting on the lake, and you see the Salem Waterfront Village behind it. Okay, let's go kind of fast through these because we have something else special for you. St. Louis Street from Meet Me in St. Louis on Lot number 3. Keep going. Okay. That's the Western Town area, which was at the entrance of Lot number 3 at Jefferson and Overland. Next one. One of the houses on St. Louis Street just before it went down. Next one. That's the Salem Waterfront Village in 1978 with the boats missing. And that's another one of the structures on that lot, all of which came down to build housing in the late 70s. And now we have a special documentary for you that was put together of the historic buildings on what is now the Sony Pictures lot. MGM became Lorimar in the late 80s, and then January 1st, 1990, Sony Pictures Entertainment entered the picture. It was Columbia Studios, and then it became Sony Studios, so take a look. I think you'll like it. The following structures have been designated as landmark or significant structures by the Culver City Council under Chapter 38, Culver City Municipal Code, with respect to historic preservation. Although many of the structures are named in honor of famous stars who have worked on the studio lot, they did not necessarily occupy that particular building. The Colonnade was the original entrance to the studio. Construction began in 1915 for Ince Triangle Studios, which was the first and largest studio in what would become Culver City, the heart of Screenland. The studio later became Goldwyn, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, Lorimar, Columbia Studios, and it is now Sony Picture Studios. The Colonnade faces Washington Boulevard and encompasses the public sidewalk along Washington. It is designated as a landmark structure by the city of Culver City. The Colonnade was designed in the formal neoclassical Beaux-Arts architectural style and retains most of its original integrity. It has been restored by Sony Pictures Entertainment under the direction of Gensler and Associates within the guidelines of the city's historic preservation program. 2 sets of 2-story high fluted columns frame the entrance, which includes 2 archways, one for entry and one for exit. Although it was abandoned as the main entry in 1941 because cars were too large, the Colonnade still internationally identifies the studio. The Thalberg Building is considered one of the most impressive structures built in the modern style in Southern California. The 137,900 square foot structure was dedicated in 1938 and is designated as a landmark structure. Sited on an angle parallel to Culver rather than Washington Boulevard, the Thalberg Building is a prominent headquarters easily viewed from the north, south, and east sides of the studio site. The building features 3-story wings extending in both directions from the central tower. The square 4-story flat roof tower rises above the wings of the building and is crowned with a setback ridge and a row of pleated trim across the top of the main parapet. The wings are T-shaped and feature 2-story high recessed metal framed windows. The windows along the first floor match the location of those above and are also recessed, multi-paned, and metal framed. 2 huge lanterns on the elaborate pedestals flank the wide concrete steps which lead to the main entrance. The Thalberg Building was constructed by MGM as the new administration building when the studio was run by Louis B. Mayer. It was named in honor of Irving Thalberg, who was considered a young genius. Thalberg was the head of production for MGM until he died in 1936 at the age of 37. This structure now houses the headquarters for Sony Pictures Entertainment and the administrative offices of Columbia Pictures. The commissary. Located on the internal studio street corner of Main Street and First Avenue, the commissary was constructed in 1935 and is designated as a significant structure. The two-story, 26,658 square foot building is an example of streamlined modern architectural style, which represents a departure from the elegant Beaux-Arts style featured in the Colonnade and the Washington facade on the studio site. The streamlined modern style is typified here by the flat roof, unbroken parapets, rounded corners, and large multi-paned windows interspersed throughout the building. The commissary has historically served as a meeting place for both movie stars, executives, and employees, as well as a dining facility, which it remains at the present time. Renovation of this facility should be complete this spring. The two-story Poitiers building was constructed in 1928. The 24,632 square foot building consists primarily of the streamlined modern style. However, it is the Art Deco portion of the southwest side of the building facing First Avenue that is designated significant. This building formerly housed the wardrobe department where many of the most famous costumes in the motion picture industry were created. Louis B. Mayer had his early offices on the second floor. During the recent renovation of the structure, Mayer's original marble fireplace was uncovered and restored. The second floor office is currently housed James Brooks Gracie Films. The studio telecommunications offices are located on the main floor of this building, which was formerly Harlow. The Myrna Building. This 8,050 square foot structure was constructed in 1935 and designed in the streamlined modern architectural style. It was formerly known as the Directors Building, where MGM directors had office suites, and it was also used for feature players' dressing rooms. It is currently used as production and casting offices. The Myrna Building is designated as a significant historic structure by the city of Culver City. The Gable Building is a three-story high, 12,306 square foot stucco structure built in the zigzag modern architectural style. Constructed in 1937, this designated significant building is almost completely original. Rows of wood molding emphasize the tops and bottoms of the window sections, and the multi-paned windows are framed with metal. This structure was originally constructed to serve as space for movie star dressing rooms and was also used as the makeup department under MGM. It is now used for production offices. Under SPE, it housed the offices for Last Action Hero and Disney's These Friends of Mine. The Hepburn Building, like Myrna Loy, was constructed in 1935 and comprises 3,568 square feet. Located west of the Myrna Loy Building on the north side of the lot, this structure was constructed in the streamlined modern style and is designated significant. It was used as dressing room suites for movie stars like Greta Garbo, Lana Turner, Spencer Tracy, and Elvis Presley. In recent years, it has been used for office space. Sylvester Stallone's offices were located in the West Wing not too long ago. Stages 3, 4, 5, and 6 were designed in a utilitarian version of the modern and zigzag modern architectural styles. Constructed in 1930, these significant three-story high buildings range in size from 6,661 square feet to 10,286 square feet. The structures are stucco clad with flat roofs and modified stepped shapes. One side of each building contains two-story high freight doors. Twin arched parapets crown the front facade of stages 3 and 4 with modern-style pilasters featuring a stepped design near the roof. Stage 5 and 6 open up to each other, and stage 6, equipped with a proscenium arch, is built 6 feet above the ground. This is where the famed Busby Berkeley musicals and Ziegfeld Follies were shot. The Crawford Building, constructed in 1927, is designated as a significant structure. It is a single-storied, 1,800 square foot Spanish-style structure located mid-lot along Washington Boulevard. This building was once Louis B. Mayer's private dining room. It was later used as a schoolhouse for noted child actors like Elizabeth Taylor, Judy Garland, Roddy McDowall, and Mickey Rooney while they were making films from 1938 through the 40s. The Crawford Building now houses production offices for Francis Coppola's company, American Zoetrope. The Tracy Building was constructed in 1935 in part from an existing movie star bungalow and is designated as a significant structure. Located along the Washington Boulevard frontage, the structure was designed in the modern style and comprises 6,059 square feet. The two-story building retains its original stucco-clad exterior and features recessed double-hung windows in a matching pattern in the first and second floors. The structure is currently used as a hospital and for office space. The Garland Building was constructed in 1934 in part from an existing movie star bungalow and is designated as a significant structure. The building is located immediately southwest of the Tracy Building along the Washington Boulevard frontage. Constructed in the modern architectural style, the two-story structure comprises 6,448 square feet and is currently used for offices. The Water Tower, which was used briefly in 1991 for a large-scale movie production after several years of dormancy, is generally not used for water storage. The tank was constructed in 1937 and is designated as a significant structure. Centrally located on the studio lot, the tower is visible from great distances as well as throughout the studio. The tower is designated significant because it is greater than 50 years old, is the oldest example of its kind in Culver City, and became a symbol of MGM Studios for the surrounding community. Water towers have come to be recognized as studio symbols in general. The water tower is being restored to its original configuration with its peaked roof. Environmental work is being done now to remove the lead paint.